Some memories don't fade with time. They just sit there quietly waiting like a bruise you forgot about until you bump into it again. Growing up, my older sister, let's call her Rachel, was everything to me. She wasn't just my sister, she was my safety net, my secret keeper, my whole world. Whenever I fell off my bike or had a nightmare or even got a bad grade, it was Rachel I ran to, not our parents, not even my friends. It was always her. I used to think our was unbreakable, but maybe it was just fragile in a way I was too young to see. Rachel was the golden light in my childhood. She built blanket forts with me when storms rattled the windows. She read me bedtime stories even when she was tired from her own schoolwork. She promised she'd watch over me when I started kindergarten, and she did. Every single day, she'd find me at lunch just to make sure I was okay. Looking back now, I realize she was carrying more weight than a teenager ever should. Our parents worked long hours trying to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Rachel, she became the stand-in parent, the one who listened to my worries, wiped my tears, and made sure I finished my homework. But no one, not even me, stopped to ask who was taking care of her. I was too little to understand back then, too little to notice the cracks forming beneath her smile. I remember once I walked into her room to ask if she could braid my hair, and I found her sitting on the floor, razor in hand, fresh cuts blooming across her thighs. She yanked her jeans down so fast, pretending nothing had happened, her face flushed with shame. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew enough to pretend I hadn't seen it. I wish I'd understood more. Maybe things would have been different. By the time Rachel was finishing high school, the gentle sister I knew had started disappearing. She skipped classes, picked fights with teachers, came home with bruised knuckles and a look in her eyes I couldn't recognize anymore. Our house, once loud with laughter, turned heavy with shouting matches. Dad would scream, Rachel would scream louder. Mom cried in the kitchen while I hid under my blanket, pressing my hands over my ears. It all came to a head the night Rachel ran away. She left a letter on the kitchen table, a cruel, angry letter blaming Mom and Dad for everything wrong in her life. I still remember the way Mom wailed when she found it, clutching it to her chest like it might physically tear her apart. The police found Rachel a few days later. She was holed up in a grimy motel with a boyfriend who was knee-deep in drug deals. He got arrested. She got sent home. I thought foolishly that maybe this would be the turning point. Maybe she'd realize how much we loved her. Maybe we'd find our way back to being sisters again. But Rachel came home angry, bitter, and more unreachable than ever. When our parents told her she needed to go to rehab, she exploded. She hurled things across the room, screamed that she wished she was never born, threatened to hurt herself if we made her go. That night, Dad had to lock her bedroom door from the outside just to keep her from breaking more windows. It was the first time I truly felt afraid of her. When Rachel finally left for rehab, I hugged her goodbye. Or at least I tried. She shoved me to the ground and spit at me. Mom whispered that it wasn't Rachel, it was the drugs, that the real Rachel was still in there somewhere, and I believed her. I needed to believe her. 2 months later, Rachel came back. She looked healthier, fuller cheeks, clearer eyes. Mom and Dad wept with relief. I made her a card. I drew our old fort, the one we used to build when it rained. I wrote how much I missed her, how happy I was that she was home. She barely glanced at it, didn't even say thank you. In the weeks that followed, it became painfully clear that Rachel hadn't just changed, she resented me. Anytime I entered the room, she left. If I spoke, she rolled her eyes. When our parents praised me for my grades or my friends, she muttered things under her breath. Cruel things, ugly things. And then there was the night she tried to kill me. We were having dinner. Mom's famous chicken salad. I remember laughing about something Dad said, feeling just for a second like maybe things were normal again, and then my throat started to close. Panic flooded me as I clawed at my neck, gasping for air. Mom screamed, spotting the tiny pieces of peanuts in the salad. She knew everyone knew I was deathly allergic. Rachel just sat there watching, smirking. Dad jabbed me with my EpiPen while Mom called 911. Her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. I survived. But the part of me that still believed my sister loved me, that part didn't. It died that night. Sometimes the safest place you know becomes the place you can't wait to leave. After that night, the night Rachel tried to poison me, I stopped feeling safe at home. I stopped feeling safe around her. No matter how many locks were on my door or how closely Mom watched over dinner preparations, I lived with a knot of fear constantly tightening in my stomach. Rachel never apologized, not once. In fact, she managed to convince her therapists and sometimes even our parents that it was all just a misunderstanding. She probably didn't know. They'd say she's still healing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't an accident. I saw it in her eyes that night. cold, gleeful. The months dragged on painfully. I kept mostly to my bedroom, surviving on snacks stashed away in a mini fridge my mom had bought for me. It was the only way I could eat without constantly checking over my shoulder. I went to bed hungry more nights than I care to admit. I lost weight, I lost trust, I lost parts of myself. I'm still trying to get back. The day I left for college felt like stepping out of a burning house. I hugged mom and dad goodbye, climbed into my battered Honda, and drove myself straight to Seattle, where I'd been accepted into a marketing program. The further I got from home, the more I could breathe. Seattle felt like a different universe. The cool gray skies, the smell of coffee shops on every corner, the way people minded their own business. It was a new start, and I clung to it desperately. For the first time in years, I could walk into a dining hall, order a sandwich, and not wonder if someone had tried to kill me. I made friends, real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not because I was useful to them, not because I was easy to manipulate. And somewhere along the way, I met Ethan. Ethan wasn't like the guys I used to imagine myself ending up with. He was nerdy, a little shy, and so obsessed with anime that he convinced me to marathon Naruto with him over a single brutal weekend. But Ethan was kind, steady, safe. We started off as friends, cramming for finals at 2 a.m., debating which anime character would survive a zombie apocalypse, and somewhere along the way, it just happened. We fell in love. When he proposed after graduation, it wasn't some grand public spectacle, no viral video, no flash mob, just him, a simple ring and shaky hands asking if we could build a life together. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We got married in a small garden ceremony on the outskirts of Seattle. Just close friends, a few family members, and against my better judgment, Rachel. My parents begged me. She's changed. They said she regrets the past. I didn't want drama at my wedding. I didn't want old wounds to fester, so I agreed. Rachel showed up wearing a white dress, a floor-length bridal white dress. She knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was cruel. It was deliberate. I saw the looks exchanged by Ethan's family, the awkward whispers, the sideways glances. Before I could even react, my dad took her aside and asked her, no. Ordered her to leave. Rachel threw a scene, of course, cried about how we were excluding her, blamed me like always, but Dad stood firm, and for once, Mom backed him up. They made her leave, and honestly, I was too happy, too relieved to let her ruin my day. Ethan and I danced under fairy lights that night, laughing like kids, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, my life was finally my own. Marriage was good to us at first. We traveled, worked hard at our jobs, saved up for a little starter home tucked away in a cozy neighborhood. It was everything I thought I wanted until it wasn't. We wanted a family badly, but month after month, test after test, doctor after doctor, nothing. Just keep trying. They said stress less. They said easy for them to say Ethan. The man who had once been my safe harbor started changing. He became obsessed. Researching diets, buying supplements, demanding we schedule every intimate moment like a military operation. At first, I understood I wanted it too, but it didn't take long before the pressure sucked all the joy out of our home. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a project. Every argument ended the same way. If you really wanted a baby, you'd try harder. I swallowed my hurt, tried harder, cut out gluten, sugar, dairy, you name it, but nothing I did was enough. And then came the affairs. Not one, not two, but two different women he met at bars. Each time I confronted him, he cried, begged, swore he loved me, swore it was just a stupid mistake. And each time, like a fool, I let him stay because I didn't want to be alone, because I was scared, because a tiny broken part of me still believed. Maybe if I were better, if I tried harder, he would love me the way he used to. Funny how the lessons you refused to learn as a child come back to teach you even harder as an adult. I was trapped, not by Ethan, not by Rachel, but by the way I had been taught to love people even when they were hurting me. I knew I couldn't live like that forever, but I didn't know how to leave. Not yet. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't shatter you all at once. It chips away at you little by little until one day you realize you're standing in a pile of rubble wondering how you didn't see it coming. The night everything fell apart didn't start off differently. It was a Thursday, gray skies, light drizzle, the kind of evening Seattle wears like a second skin. I'd been planning to finally sit Ethan down, tell him I couldn't do this anymore, tell him I deserved better, even if part of me still wasn't sure I believed it. He didn't come home. At first, I told myself it was work, a late meeting, traffic, anything but what my gut was screaming at me. But hours passed, my calls went unanswered, texts left unread. Somewhere around midnight, anger finally overtook fear. I grabbed my keys and drove to the only place I knew he might be, the little dive bar he used to frequent before we got married. The second I walked in, I spotted him and her, Rachel. They were tucked into a booth in the far corner, heads bent together, laughing, flirting. His hand tracing slow, lazy circles on her wrist. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I just stood there frozen while the world spun around me. Then I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture. Another proof for myself. For the part of me that still wanted to pretend, maybe somehow this wasn't real. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself not to scream, not to break. Instead, I turned around, stumbled back into the cold night, and drove. I don't even remember the drive home. All I know is that I packed a bag, whatever I could grab, in 10 minutes and fled. I ended up back at my parents' house, standing on the porch in the rain like some abandoned stray. Mom opened the door, took one look at my face, and just pulled me into her arms. I collapsed there, sobbing, shaking, barely able to get the words out. But when I showed them the pictures, Rachel and Ethan grinning like they hadn't just set fire to my entire world, my parents' faces hardened. Dad didn't even say a word. He just picked up his phone, called Rachel, and barked at her to come home immediately. She did, and she brought Ethan with her. The audacity. They stood there in the living room, hand in hand like some twisted version of Bonnie and Clyde, trying to explain how they had found comfort in each other and how they were meant to be, as if that justified the betrayal, as if stabbing me in the back was somehow fate's grand plan. My dad's voice shook with fury as he told them both to get out. My mom, usually the peacemaker, shoved Rachel's suitcase at her and slammed the door. That night, my childhood home, the one that had seen birthday parties and scraped knees and Christmas mornings, became the place where I officially lost my sister forever and my husband. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, that I cut them out cleanly and never looked back, but life's messy. Keith, because honestly, I stopped thinking of him as Ethan the night he chose her, kept calling, texting, begging, telling me Rachel was devastated, telling me he made a mistake, telling me we could still fix this. For a minute, I was tempted to answer, to scream at him, to demand he explain himself. But then I realized something. I didn't need his explanation. I didn't need his apology or his regret or his endless parade of excuses. I needed to save myself. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. I packed up the rest of my things from our house, or rather, what little I wanted to keep. A few books, some clothes, photos I couldn't bear to throw away, even though looking at them felt like swallowing glass. I left the wedding album behind. I didn't want it. I didn't want any of it. A few days later, I found a small one-bedroom apartment a few neighborhoods away from my parents. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and the parts of myself I was trying to piece back together. I also started looking for a new job, maybe even a fresh start in a different city altogether, somewhere without so many memories clinging to every street corner. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was planning, dreaming. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was mine. Healing doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it feels like watching tiny cracks knit themselves closed, one fragile moment at a time. The first few weeks after filing for divorce were a blur. Paperwork, packing meetings with the lawyer, answering questions I never thought I'd have to answer about shared assets, about debts, about what I wanted to keep and what I was ready to leave behind. Every day I woke up feeling a little lighter, a little stronger. But the nights were the hardest. That's when the memories crept in, the what-ifs, the could-have-beens. I started taking long walks through the little park near my apartment whenever the sadness got too loud. It wasn't anything special, just a few winding paths, some stubborn flowers poking through the grass, the distant sound of kids laughing at the playground, but it helped. Being outside, moving forward even when I didn't know where I was going. One chilly morning as golden leaves crunched under my boots, I felt different. Strange off. At first, I brushed it off, stress probably, or maybe I was finally getting sick after months of running on pure adrenaline. But when the feeling didn't go away, when certain smells made my stomach churn and my body felt heavier, somehow I bought a pregnancy test. I stood in the tiny bathroom of my apartment, hands trembling, heart thudding painfully against my ribs. 2 pink lines. Positive, I sat down on the cold tile floor, the test clutched in my shaking hands and cried. This was supposed to be the thing we had wanted so badly, the thing we fought and cried and hoped for, the thing Ethan, no Keith, used to research obsessively at 2 a.m. And now here it was, but everything else was gone. My parents were supportive in their own complicated way. They reminded me gently and often that having a child with Keith would forever tether me to him. You don't have to make any decisions right away. Mom said, squeezing my hand across the kitchen table. Whatever you choose, we'll be here. Dad, on the other hand, was more blunt. You deserve a fresh start, sweetheart, without that man dragging you down. I tried to listen, I really did, but it was hard to quiet the whirlwind in my mind. The part of me that had dreamed of chubby cheeks and lullabies and tiny fingers wrapped around mine. The part that still whispered, maybe you can fix it. When I told Keith about the pregnancy, his reaction was almost immediate. Suddenly, he wanted marriage counseling. Suddenly, he was ready to cut things off with Rachel. Suddenly, he wanted us to be a family again. I almost laughed. It was so absurd, it didn't even hurt. Not really. I told him flat out there was no getting back together. There would be no marriage counseling, no fresh start for us. If I decided to have this child, it would be about co-parenting only for the child's sake, not his. Keith didn't take it well. He yelled at me over the phone, his voice thick with rage. He screamed that if I had gotten pregnant sooner, none of this would have happened. That I had forced him into Rachel's arms. It was like a final confirmation of everything I already knew. This man would never be my safe place again. After that call, I blocked his number. I didn't want to give him another second of my peace. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I spent hours walking the park trails, sitting by the little duck pond, talking to the sky like it might answer me. Was I ready for this? Could I give a child the life they deserved? Could I raise them knowing their father was someone who had hurt me so deeply? One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees and the world turned soft and golden, I sat on a worn bench and finally let myself answer honestly. No, not right now. Not like this. I wasn't in a place emotionally, financially, mentally where I could bring a child into the world and give them everything they deserved. It broke my heart. But it was a clean break, a necessary one. I made the decision quietly with no fanfare, no big announcements, just me, my heart, and the future I still hope to build. It wasn't an easy decision, and it's not one I made lightly. There are nights even now when I wonder what might have been, when I imagine a tiny hand clutching mine, a sleepy voice calling me mommy. But deep down, I know I chose kindness for myself, for the life that could have been. And maybe, just maybe for the life I'm still figuring out how to build. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after you survive the worst thing you thought could happen. Not joy, not yet, but something quieter, something steadier. Like the soft hush right before sunrise. Finalizing the divorce wasn't easy, not emotionally, not financially. There were meetings, negotiations, uncomfortable questions about assets and debts and who owed what, but my lawyer was good. Tough when I needed her to be patient when I wanted to break down. In the end, Keith had to pay a substantial alimony settlement, enough for me to secure a modest but beautiful little townhouse on the edge of the city. Nothing extravagant, just mine. The first time I unlocked the door to my new place, I stood there in the empty living room breathing in the smell of fresh paint and possibility. It wasn't much, but it was safe. It was a beginning. Meanwhile, Keith and Rachel's fairy tale crumbled faster than anyone could have predicted. Less than 2 months after my divorce papers were signed, I heard from mutual friends that Keith had kicked Rachel out of their apartment during a vicious fight. Apparently, it had gotten so bad that neighbors threatened to call the police. Rachel tried desperately to come crawling back to our parents, cried on the front porch, begged through the locked door. But my father, once so patient, so forgiving, simply said through the door, "You made your choices," and called the police when she refused to leave. I don't know exactly where she ended up. Last I heard, she was couch surfing with old friends, trying to scrape together enough money for rent. Part of me wishes I could feel satisfaction, that I could gloat or feel vindicated. But mostly, I just feel detached. Their chaos isn't mine to fix anymore. Their pain isn't my burden. I've finally set it down. In my new home, I started building something different. I bought secondhand furniture, piece by piece, a worn leather couch, a rickety bookshelf, a table. I refinished myself with clumsy paint-stained hands. I threw myself into my work too. Marketing had always been something I loved. The creativity, the challenge, the way a good campaign could tell a story that mattered. When a job opportunity came up with a local nonprofit, I jumped at it. It wasn't flashy or glamorous, but it meant something. Helping people, telling real stories, making a difference, even in small ways. The work grounded me, gave me purpose beyond just surviving. I started going to therapy too. Real therapy, not the kind Rachel manipulated or my parents tiptoed around. It was uncomfortable at first, talking about the parts of my life I had locked away for so long. Peeling back layers of guilt and fear and hurt, but slowly it started to help. I began understanding why I had loved so recklessly, why I had clung so tightly to people who didn't love me back, why walking away had felt like failing even when it was survival. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty, it was kindness. To myself, I made friends too. Real friends. Women who had been through their own storms and come out stronger. People who saw the messy, complicated parts of me and didn't flinch. One crisp Saturday morning, I found myself sitting at a tiny coffee shop near the park. A warm mug between my hands, sunlight pouring through the windows. And for the first time in a long, long time, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Waiting for an apology that would never come. Waiting for someone to choose me. Waiting for permission to start living. I was already living, messily, imperfectly, beautifully. That night I took a long walk through the park. The same paths I had wandered when I was lost and broken. Only this time, I wasn't lost, I wasn't broken. The sky stretched overhead, bruised purple and gold as the last light faded. Somewhere in the distance, a baby laughed. The air smelled like rain and new beginnings. I stopped at a bench overlooking the little duck pond, the same bench where months ago I had cried and questioned everything. I sat down, closed my eyes, breathed in, and when I opened them again, the first stars were just starting to peek through the twilight. A whole new sky, a whole new chapter. A small, tired smile tugged at my lips as I whispered into the cooling air. If you were me, what would you have done?